The night everything changed didn't begin with a storm, but it felt like one waiting inside her chest. She remembered the way the air smelled, damp, metallic, like the world itself was warning her. Her room was dim, lit only by her phone screen, and every sound felt louder than it should have been: the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the distant barking of a dog, the slow thump of her own heartbeat. She had been staring at her phone for too long, waiting for a message that never came, feeling that strange, silent fear that creeps in when something is wrong but you can't name it yet. She tried to shake it off, but her body knew before her mind did, something was breaking. Her fingers trembled when she unlocked her phone for the 100th time. Nothing new. No calls. No texts. Just emptiness and a growing knot in her stomach. She pressed the device against her chest and closed her eyes, hoping the silence would start to feel normal. But instead, it echoed. And in that echo, she heard a truth she wasn't ready for: tonight, your life will shift. She didn't know how. She didn't know why. All she knew was the heaviness in her breath, the coldness in her hands, and the sense that someone, something, was pulling away from her. And deep down, she felt the first painful tug of betrayal forming like a shadow behind her. She tried to distract herself, moving through her room as though doing something, anything, could stop the ache rising through her chest. The floor felt cold beneath her feet. The air felt too still. Her own thoughts were too loud. She opened her window, letting the night breeze slip in. It smelled like rain, like wet leaves and secrets carried from somewhere far away. She whispered into the darkness, asking questions she wasn't brave enough to say out loud. Why hasn't she called? Why does it feel like something is missing? Why do I feel like she's slipping away? Each question felt heavier than the last, as though the universe had already formed the answers but refused to reveal them. When she finally sat back on her bed, her phone vibrated suddenly, sharp, unexpected, cutting through the silence like a blade. Her heart jumped. Her breath caught. For a moment, hope rose inside her like light. She grabbed the phone quickly, hands trembling. But the screen wasn't what she expected. It wasn't a message. It was a notification from an app she barely used. And somehow, that small disappointment felt like a crack spreading through her ribs. She dropped her phone beside her and stared at the ceiling, blinking back the burn behind her eyes. That's when she whispered the thought she had been avoiding all night: what if she's with someone else right now? As soon as the idea formed, it carved itself into her. And she couldn't shake it. Not anymore. She lay there, trying to breathe slowly, but every inhale felt sharp. Memories of the girl she loved played behind her eyes, moments that used to make her smile. The first time they held hands. The soft laugh that always made her chest warm. The tiny messages that used to come all day, filling her phone and her heart with a feeling she thought would never end. She clung to those memories like broken pieces of glass, hurting herself with them but unable to let them go. She tried to remind herself of the promises: the "I'll never hurt you," the "you're the only one," the "nothing will ever come between us." But tonight, those words felt like ghosts, hollow, echoing, fading. Her mind replayed the small signs she had ignored: the sudden distance, the late replies, the excuses that felt too thin, too convenient. She told herself it was stress, school, work, anything except betrayal. Because betrayal was too heavy. Too sharp. Too real. Yet the longer she lay there, the more the truth crept in: you felt this coming. That thought sank into her like a stone dropping into deep water. She stared into the darkness until her eyes blurred, and she whispered, "Please don't let it be true." But somewhere deep in her soul, she already knew: tonight was the beginning of an unraveling she couldn't stop. Her phone buzzed again, this time faint, but enough to jolt her upright. Her pulse quickened as she reached for it, moving slowly as though afraid of what waited on the screen. Her fingers brushed the glass, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. One new message. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. She forced herself to open it. The name at the top of the screen was hers, the girl she loved. Relief rushed through her for a second. But then she read the message. 3 short words. 3 gentle, emotionless words that sliced her open. We need talk. No heart emoji. No warmth. No softness. Just a flat statement that carried the weight of something ending. Her stomach dropped. Her breath thinned. She reread the message again and again, hoping she misread, hoping it meant something else. But the heaviness behind those words felt final. Cold. Wrong. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably as she typed back, about what? She stared at the message before hitting send, her thumb hesitating as fear pressed against her lungs. After sending it, she waited, seconds stretching into minutes that felt like hours. The room felt smaller. The silence grew thicker. She felt like she was drowning inside her own heartbeat. And then her phone buzzed again, but this time, she didn't want to look. When she finally gathered the courage to check the screen, she felt her entire body freeze. The message wasn't long. It wasn't detailed. It wasn't kind. It was a single line that carried the full weight of betrayal. I haven't been honest with you. The world around her slowed. The ceiling blurred. Her breath collapsed inside her chest. She reread the message, each word twisting deeper into her heart. I haven't been honest. Honest about what? Honest with who? 100 possible meanings flashed in her mind, each one worse than the last. She felt heat behind her eyes, the burn of tears she refused to let fall. Her throat tightened painfully, as though her body was trying to keep the truth from escaping. She whispered into the silence, tell me it's not another person. Please, not that. But fear had already begun its slow crawl through her veins. Her hands turned cold. Her legs felt weak. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears like distant thunder. She typed back, slowly, painfully, what do you mean? Her thumb hovered before sending. And right then, right in that fragile, trembling moment, her phone lit up again with a new notification. But this one wasn't from the girl she loved. It was a message from someone else. A name she recognized. A name she feared. A name that should not have appeared at that moment, and when she opened it, her entire world shattered. The days after the betrayal felt unreal, like she was living inside someone else's body. She moved through the world as if her soul was 2 steps behind her, unable to catch up. Mornings became the hardest. She would open her eyes and for 2 slow, excruciating seconds, she forgot what had happened. Then the memory hit, sharp, cold, unforgiving, and her chest tightened before she could even breathe. She found herself staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the room, the same room where she once dreamed about a future filled with love, stability, and trust. Now the silence felt heavier than sound, pressing against her lungs, reminding her she was alone. She couldn't eat. Not because she didn't want to, but because every swallow felt like forcing down broken glass. Her mother noticed the changes, but she didn't know how to ask the right questions. She merely watched her daughter shrink inside herself little by little. Even her friends could feel something was wrong, the dimmed voice, the forced smile, the way her thoughts drifted far away in the middle of conversations. But she told no one. She couldn't. Shame wrapped around her like a second skin. The betrayal wasn't just a heartbreak, it was a wound she felt responsible for, even though she wasn't. And that's what hurt the most. The way she blamed herself for the actions of someone who was meant to protect her heart. The days after the betrayal, nighttime became her enemy. When the world went quiet and the sky turned dark, her thoughts became louder than thunder. She replayed everything, every moment, every conversation, every touch, every promise, trying to find the exact second where everything began to fall apart. She tried to remember the smile he wore when he lied. She tried to pinpoint the shift in his voice when he started drifting away from her. But the more she searched, the more she realized that betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't come crashing like a storm. It creeps in like a shadow while you're laughing, loving, trusting. Until one day you look up and realize you are standing in darkness. Sometimes she cried without tears, that empty kind of crying where your body trembles but your eyes stay dry because the pain is too deep for the surface. And when the tears finally did come, they came silently, without warning, soaking her pillow while her thoughts whispered the question she hated most: why wasn't I enough? She tried praying, tried distracting herself, tried pretending she was okay, but nothing worked. She felt like the betrayal had stolen not only her love, but her identity. She didn't recognize the girl in the mirror anymore, the one with the swollen eyes, the trembling lips, the heart that didn't know how to beat without hurting. And yet, beneath all of this pain, a small, hidden part of her wanted to understand. To know the truth. To hear it from him. Even if it shattered her again. Unreal, Lee. One afternoon, unable to take the weight of the silence anymore, she grabbed her phone and stared at his name on the screen. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the urge to demand answers she knew she might never get. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She imagined his voice, the same voice that once comforted her, now coated with guilt, excuses, or worse. Indifference. Would he apologize? Would he deny everything? Would he blame her? Or would he sound cold, like someone who had already moved on from her pain? The possibilities churned in her mind like a storm she couldn't escape. She locked the phone. Unlocked it again. Locked it again. Her breath grew shallow, her heartbeat uneven. And she realized she wasn't ready, not for closure, not for confrontation, not for the truth. So instead, she walked outside, hoping fresh air would soften the ache inside her. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds, and the wind carried the smell of rain, a smell she once found comforting, now reminding her of the weight in her chest. She sat under a tree, watching leaves fall one by one, and for a moment, she wondered if she would ever feel whole again. But healing wasn't coming that day. Not yet. Instead, she felt a strange bitterness crawling inside her, a bitterness she didn't want, but one she couldn't stop. Betrayal had awakened an anger she didn't know she was capable of holding. And it scared her. The following week, things got worse. Not because of something she discovered, but because of rumors. Whispers. The kind of whispers that snake their way through school, through the community, through the places where people pretend to care but secretly enjoy the taste of gossip. She felt their eyes on her, pitiful, curious, judgmental. Some girls whispered as she walked by, their voices low but their eyes sharp. Some boys smirked as if heartbreak was a joke they enjoyed watching unfold. She heard bits of conversations. I heard she cried for days, he cheated on her badly, she must have known something, why is she still acting hurt? The cruelty wasn't in what they said, but in how lightly they said it, as if her pain was entertainment. She wanted to scream, to tell them they didn't understand, but she kept walking, her footsteps slow, her eyes pointed toward the ground. Every rumor felt like another stab. Every whisper felt like another reminder of how helpless she was. She didn't eat at school anymore, she barely spoke. The betrayal had taken her heart, but the rumors were taking her dignity. Yet, something unexpected began to stir inside her, not a spark of hope, not yet. But the beginning of resistance. A tiny voice deep within her whispered, "They don't know your story." And for the first time, she believed that maybe, someday, they would. One evening, while she was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzed. She ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again. And again. 3 messages. Same sender. Him. Her breath froze in her chest, as if her lungs forgot how to move. She reached for the phone with trembling fingers. The notifications glowed brightly in the dark room, each word carving into her heart like a blade. The first message said, "We need to talk." The second said, "There are things you don't know." And the third, the one that made her sit straight up in bed, heart pounding, hands shaking, said, "Please. Whatever you heard. It's not the whole truth." Her body turned cold, her mind went blank. Her heart started racing violently, like it was trying to break out of her chest. What truth was he talking about? What things did she not know, and why? After all this silence, was he reaching out now? She stared at the messages, feeling the world tilt beneath her, and with a shaky hand, she opened the chat. But before she could type anything, a fourth message appeared, one that would change everything. I need to see you. Tonight. The days after the truth came out did not feel like days at all, more like long, heavy nights that refused to end. She moved through them quietly, as though the world had become muffled, distant, unreachable. Every sound felt too sharp, the scrape of a chair, the ticking of a clock, the faint chatter outside her window. But inside her, everything was silent. Too silent. She tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, the memory of that message flashed like lightning behind her eyelids. The girl she loved. The girl she trusted with her whole heart. Had lied. Had held secrets. Had shared pieces of herself with someone else. She remembered the moment she confronted her, the trembling voice. The shaking hands, the feeling of standing on the edge of a cliff with no ground beneath her. The confession had come slowly, like poison dripping from a wounded heart. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. I didn't know how to tell you. Those words replayed endlessly, carving new wounds each time. Even now, in the quiet of her room, she could still hear them. She could still see the guilt in the girl's eyes. She could still feel the exact moment her heart cracked, not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like something delicate being crushed between two fingers. She wondered how betrayal could feel so warm and cold at the same time. Warm with the memory of what used to be. Cold with the truth of what it had become. And she whispered into the emptiness, "Why wasn't I enough?" But no answer came. Only silence. She tried to survive the days that followed, moving slowly, carefully, as though her heart had become a fragile glass sphere that might shatter with the slightest touch. Every corner of her world carried memories now. The path she used to walk together with her. The songs they once shared. The places where they laughed until their stomachs hurt. Every memory felt like a ghost brushing against her skin. And she hated that she still loved her. That love clung to her like smoke, unseen, but impossible to breathe around. She kept replaying everything in her mind, trying to find the moment where things had gone wrong. Was it when the messages became shorter? When the calls became rushed? Or was it long before then, quiet signs she ignored because she trusted too deeply? One afternoon, she sat by her window, watching people walk by with lives that seemed so simple, so untouched by pain. The world moved on as if nothing inside her had collapsed. She could hear laughter from a distance, children playing, the soft rumble of traffic. But she felt disconnected from all of it, like she was behind a glass wall that separated her from life itself. A tear rolled down her cheek, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet surrender to the weight she carried. She asked herself a question she had avoided for days. If she loved me, why did she choose someone else? The question lingered in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore. And it was in that moment she realized something terrifying. She didn't know how to heal from this. In the midst of her pain, she began noticing things she had never stopped to feel before. Her hands were always cold now. Her shoulders were always tense. Her breaths came in shallow waves, as though her body had forgotten how to breathe fully. She walked through her home like a ghost, silent, slow, disconnected. Even her reflection in the mirror looked different. The shadows beneath her eyes were darker. Her face looked tired, as though the heartbreak had softened her into someone older, quieter, more fragile. At night, the world became heavier. She would lie in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind push against her window. Sometimes she felt the urge to scream, not out of anger, but out of the unbearable pressure building inside her chest. But no sound came. Instead, she would curl deeper into herself, clutching the blankets as though they could hold her together. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how it made her question her worth. Why wasn't I enough? Was I too much? Not enough? Too emotional? Too trusting? Too loving? The questions circled her mind like vultures, waiting to pick apart whatever strength she had left. She would scroll through old photos, smiling faces, intertwined hands, memories that now felt like lies. Each picture stung a little more. Each smile felt sharper. She didn't delete them. She couldn't. Letting go of them felt like tearing away pieces of herself. And in that quiet struggle, she wondered if heartbreak could physically change a person, because she no longer recognized who she was becoming. One evening, she forced herself to leave the house, needing air that wasn't trapped inside the walls that now felt too heavy with memories. She walked slowly, the cold wind brushing against her skin like icy fingers. The sky above her was dim, painted with fading blues and soft grays. She wrapped her arms around herself, as though shielding her heart from the world. The streets around her were familiar, yet tonight they felt different, emptier, quieter, heavier. She stopped near a bench and sat down, letting the world move without her. People passed by in blurs, conversations fading into the wind. She watched their faces, searching for something, an answer, a sign, a distraction from her own thoughts. But all she found was the same aching weight pressing against her ribs. As she sat there, her mind drifted back to a memory she tried so hard to bury, the moment she saw the proof. The message from that other person. The screenshots. The late-night calls she wasn't aware of. The truth she never asked for but somehow received. It replayed like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She felt tears sting her eyes again, but she wiped them quickly, refusing to let the world see. She whispered softly, "I deserve better. Don't I?" The wind didn't answer. The sky didn't shift. But for a small moment, she felt her chest loosen, just enough to breathe again. And in that fragile breath, she realized something quietly painful: healing wasn't going to come quickly. Or easily. Or gently. And she wasn't sure she was ready for the journey. She rose from the bench, feeling the weight of her heartbreak settle somewhere deep inside her bones. As she walked home, the streetlights flickered above her, casting long, trembling shadows on the ground. Each step felt heavy, but she kept moving, not because she felt strong, but because she didn't know what else to do. When she reached her door, she hesitated, her hand resting on the handle. She knew that once she stepped inside, she would be returning to the same emptiness, the same silence, the same memories clawing at her heart. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The moment she pushed the door open, her phone buzzed sharply in her pocket, so sudden that her heart jolted. She pulled it out with trembling fingers, expecting another wave of pain. But it wasn't from the girl who broke her. It wasn't from friends. It was from an unknown number. A message with only 2 words: "You deserve truth." She froze, confusion washing over her. Another message arrived instantly, this time with a photo attached. A photo she didn't recognize. A face she'd never seen. And underneath it, a sentence that made her knees weaken: "There's more you don't know." Her breath caught. Her vision blurred. Someone else knew about the betrayal, someone else had been watching the truth unfold, and someone, somehow, was ready to reveal everything. The room began to spin around her as she stared at the screen. Her heart pounding with fear and curiosity, she whispered shakily into the silence, "Who are you?" The phone buzzed again, and the reply made her stomach drop. The message lingered on her screen like a shadow refusing to fade. "There's more you don't know." Those 5 words pulsed in her chest, making her heartbeat unsteady. The house felt colder now, the air thick with something she couldn't name. She stood frozen in the doorway, the night breeze still brushing against her back, as if the world outside was begging her not to step further into the darkness waiting inside. But the door closed behind her with a soft click, trapping her with the truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Her fingers trembled as she locked her phone, then unlocked it again, afraid to look but unable to resist. The unfamiliar face in the attached photo stared back at her, a girl. Younger. Softer. Someone who looked fragile. Yet dangerously familiar. She didn't know the name, didn't know the story, only the sharp, gut-deep instinct that this person was tied to her heartbreak in a way she wasn't prepared to confront. She moved slowly to her bed and sat at the edge, the mattress sinking under her weight. The silence pressed against her ears so heavily it felt like pressure underwater. She whispered to herself, "Why now? Who would send this?" Her breath shook. Her thoughts twisted. She felt as though someone had opened a locked door in her life and left it swinging in the dark. And beneath all her fear, something else simmered quietly, anger she hadn't allowed herself to feel until this moment. The kind that rises when the truth scratches at the walls of a heart that has already suffered enough. Her phone buzzed again, vibrating sharply against her palm. She flinched as if it were a warning. When she opened the message, her chest tightened. "She wasn't honest with you because she wasn't only lying to you." The words hit her like a cold slap. She read them again, slower, her breath catching on every syllable. What did that mean? Who else was being lied to? And why was a stranger the one revealing this? She felt her pulse quicken as she stared at the screen, but before she could respond, another message arrived, this time a voice note. Just 1 second long. Just 1 second. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the play button, the weight of fear pressing heavily against her chest. Her room felt smaller. The air felt stale. She pressed play, a single sound filled the silence, a quiet sob, a girl's sob, soft. Sharp. Broken, she froze, her entire body stiffening. She didn't know the voice, but something in the way it trembled felt painfully real, like the sound of someone who was living the same heartbreak she was drowning in. She whispered, barely audible, "Who are you?" Before she could type it, another message appeared, "We should talk." I know what she did. Her fingers went cold. This wasn't random, this wasn't a mistake, this person knew her story, inside it, around it, beneath it, and suddenly, she felt the terrifying sense that the betrayal she thought she understood was only the surface of something much deeper. She didn't reply, not immediately. Instead, she stood and began pacing her room, her mind racing faster than her steps. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet, the shadows in the corners stretching like long fingers reaching for her. She felt the familiar sting in her eyes, that heavy burn before tears spill, but she refused to cry. Not this time. Not when she was finally facing something bigger than heartbreak, the possibility of hidden truths. She grabbed her blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders like a shield, but she still felt exposed, fragile, and unbearably alone. Her thoughts spiraled. Was this girl in the photo the other person? The real reason for the betrayal? Or was she another victim? Another name on a list of broken hearts left behind by the girl she once loved? The idea twisted inside her. She remembered every time she felt dismissed, every excuse, every shift in tone, clues she had buried under trust. Her stomach churned. She sat on the floor, pulling her knees tightly to her chest, grounding herself in the soft, rhythmic sound of her own breaths. But even that wasn't enough to calm the tremor in her hands. She opened her phone again and stared at the picture. The girl's eyes were filled with something, fear? Sadness? Regret? She tried to imagine her story, her connection, her pain. And as the questions piled higher and higher, suffocating her, she whispered into the heavy silence. How many lies were there? The question didn't ask for an answer, but the darkness in the room seemed to offer one anyway, more than you ever knew. She stood up slowly, steadying herself as though the truth had weight. She moved to her desk and switched on the small lamp, its warm light spilling into the room like a fragile promise. The glow softened the shadows, but it didn't erase the tension crawling up her spine. She unlocked her phone again and opened the stranger's messages, rereading them, letting each word settle deeper into her thoughts. You deserve truth, whoever this was. They weren't threatening her. They weren't mocking her. Their tone felt careful, almost protective. But that only made it more confusing. Because why would someone she didn't know want to protect her from a heartbreak that wasn't theirs? She typed slowly, her fingers hesitating after each word. What do you want from me? She stared at the message, breath trembling, before hitting send. The weight felt endless. She rubbed her palms against her thighs, trying to release the tension. Then, buzz, her heart jumped. She opened the message, to show you the truth she hid from us both. Us both. Her breath stilled, her hands stiffened. Those two words wrapped around her like a cold chain. This wasn't another girl in the background. This wasn't a random witness. This was someone who had been hurt too, someone who had lived the same betrayal. Her chest tightened painfully as she whispered, "She hurt you too. Didn't she?" But before she could send the thought, the next message arrived, a location pin, a place, a meeting point, a truth waiting outside the walls of her room. She stared at the location pin for a long time, her breath thin and unsteady. The spot wasn't unfamiliar. It was a quiet park not far from her home, a place she had once visited with the girl who broke her. The memory twisted her stomach into knots. Why there? Why that place? Why at this moment when she was already drowning? She looked around her room, searching for answers in the silence, but all she found was the weight of her own beating heart. She paced again, gripping her phone tightly. Was this safe? Was this a trap? Or was this the only path toward closure, toward understanding, toward finally breathing without pain? Her mind battled itself. One side begged her to ignore the message, to crawl into bed and hide from the world. The other side whispered that she would never heal unless she faced the truth. She swallowed hard. Then another message arrived, trembling her phone in her hand. Please come. I can't keep this secret alone. Her knees weakened, not because of the words, but because she recognized the emotion behind them, the desperation of someone breaking, someone just like her. She grabbed her jacket, slipping it over her shoulders with trembling hands. She paused in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection, eyes red, heart wounded, soul exhausted. But beneath all that pain, there was a spark of strength, a spark of fire. She whispered to herself. This ends tonight. She turned off the lights, stepped out of her house, and began walking toward the meeting point, toward the truth, toward the stranger, toward the darkness waiting to be uncovered, and she had no idea that what she was about to learn would hurt far more than the betrayal itself. The night air wrapped around her like a cold warning as she walked toward the park, each step echoing the tremble inside her chest. The world around her was unnaturally quiet, only the whisper of wind brushing through the trees and the distant hum of traffic. Her heart pounded, each beat sharp and uncertain. She pulled her jacket closer, feeling the fabric press against the fragile ache in her ribs. The dim glow of streetlights stretched long shadows across the ground, shadows she stepped over carefully, as though they were pieces of her past she was finally ready to confront. As she approached the park's entrance, she felt herself slow. The memories here were loud, laughter that once felt eternal. Promises whispered under the night sky, moments that now felt like lies painted with soft colors. She inhaled deeply, the cold air stinging her lungs, grounding her. You're strong enough, she whispered to herself. You deserve answers. She stepped inside the park, and for a moment, she felt as though the world held its breath with her. Her eyes scanned the empty benches, the quiet path, the faint glow of a lamp flickering near the center. And then she saw her, a figure sitting alone beneath the old tree, hood pulled forward, shoulders trembling slightly. The stranger. The girl from the photo. The person who held pieces of the truth she had been too broken to look for. As she approached, her footsteps softened, her breath slowed. She wasn't ready. But she was here. And sometimes, that was the greatest courage a wounded heart could offer. The girl lifted her head slowly, revealing eyes swollen from crying, eyes that held the same exhaustion, the same heartbreak, the same questions. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt sacred, like two wounds recognizing each other. Finally, the stranger exhaled shakily, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You must be her, she whispered, voice barely holding itself together. She nodded, unsure if she could speak without her voice cracking. The girl looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers anxiously. I'm not here to hurt you, she said. I'm here because. She lied to both of us. The words hit harder spoken aloud. She felt her throat tighten. The ache inside her growing sharper. How long? She managed to ask. The stranger's eyes filled with tears again. Months, she whispered. She told me she was single. She said she had left someone who didn't care about her. I believed her. She swallowed hard, the truth sinking into her chest with a weight she wasn't prepared for. The betrayal wasn't personal. It wasn't a reflection of who she was. It was a pattern, repeated. Hidden. And she wasn't the only victim of it. The stranger wiped her cheeks. I only found out about you when I saw your picture on her phone. She lied even then. Said you were just a friend she was helping. But I knew. I felt it. Pain twisted inside her. But also a strange relief. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't unlovable. She was deceived. And that realization hurt, but it also freed something deep within her. For the first time, the blame began to shift off her own shoulders. The stranger pulled out her phone and unlocked it with trembling fingers. There's something else, she whispered. Something you need to see. She hesitated, as if revealing it might break them both further. Then she handed the phone over gently. Her fingers brushed against the screen, opening the messages. And as she scrolled through them, the truth unfolded with every line, words filled with promises, plans, affection. The exact same phrases she once received, repeated to someone else like recycled memory. Each message felt like a cut, but she forced herself to keep reading. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was intentional, consistent, and deeply manipulative. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. The stranger spoke softly, voice raw. She told me the same things she told you. The exact same sentences. Copy-paste feelings. A heavy silence followed. The wind rustled through the tree above them, scattering dry leaves around their feet like quiet reminders of things that fall apart when seasons change. She felt her breath deepen, steadying. The pain was still sharp, but it no longer felt like it wanted to swallow her whole. Instead, it felt like something she could finally face without breaking. I thought it was my fault, she whispered. I thought I wasn't enough. The stranger shook her head immediately. You were more than enough. We both were. She just wasn't capable of loving anyone honestly. For the first time since the heartbreak, she felt something loosen in her chest, a small release, like a knot slowly untangling. She handed the phone back, her fingers no longer shaking. Understanding the truth didn't erase the pain. But it lifted the weight she had been carrying alone. They sat there together, two wounded hearts sharing the same quiet space, letting the truth settle between them like dust after a storm. For a long while, neither spoke. Words weren't needed. Their silence was a mirror, reflecting what betrayal had done to them, how deeply it had carved into their trust, their hope, their sense of self. Eventually, she exhaled, the sound soft but steady. What made you reach out to me? She asked. The stranger looked up, eyes soft with empathy. Because you deserved the truth, she whispered. Because I saw the way she talked about you. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. And you didn't deserve to heal in confusion while she walked around pretending everything was fine. She swallowed hard, touched unexpectedly by the kindness of someone who owed her nothing. Thank you, she breathed. The girl offered a faint, heartbreaking smile. I know what it feels like to have your soul cracked open by someone you trusted. I didn't want you to feel alone. Those words settled deep, warming a part of her that had been cold for too long. She looked around the park, at the dim lights, the trembling branches, the dark sky stretching endlessly above them. This place once held memories of love. Now it held the truth that would finally free her. She wiped her tears, feeling strength gather slowly inside her bones. "She can't hurt me anymore," she said quietly. The girl nodded. "She won't." And in that moment, under the hushed silence of the night, she realized something powerful. This wasn't the night she broke, this was the night she began to rebuild. They stood up together, the weight of the night settling gently instead of painfully. She felt lighter, not healed, not perfect, but no longer trapped. The stranger gave her a soft, understanding smile. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered. And somehow, she believed it. They walked toward the exit of the park, steps slow, breaths steady. When they reached the gate, the stranger paused. "This is where we part," she said. "But if you ever need someone who understands, I'm here." She nodded, grateful in a way she didn't have words for. Then the stranger turned and disappeared down the path, leaving her standing under the dim glow of a streetlight. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. She took a deep breath, letting the cold night air fill her lungs fully, completely. No shaking. No fear. No confusion. Only truth. Only clarity. Only the quiet, beginning lightness of healing. As she walked home, the street beneath her feet felt different, steady, grounding. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that heartbreak tried to steal. And when she finally opened her door, the darkness inside her home no longer frightened her. It was just a room. Just a place to rest. A space she would refill with new beginnings. She sat on her bed, closed her eyes, and whispered to herself, not as someone broken, but as someone rising. "I survived." Her voice was soft, but steady, "and I will love again." Her heart didn't feel perfect, but it felt possible, and that was enough. This wasn't the end of her story, it was the beginning of the life she deserved, a life where her heart would never be treated like a secret again.